There's a Dragon Quest VII remake rumor floating around. Could we be looking at playing a modernized version of the longest JRPG ever created? Today we're going to break down where this rumor even came from, why everyone is excited about it, and why I'm not personally convinced about how valid it is quite yet. We have a leak, everyone. According to the website mpfirst.com, Dragon Quest VII is getting a remake in the 2026 or 2027 fiscal year. Just to be clear, we are not talking about a simple remaster. This is supposed to be a full-blown remake. This information is coming from internal documents that have been seen outlining projects tied to Square Enix's top projects, scheduled for either this fiscal year or late next year. If this rumor comes to fruition, I would be through the roof. So here's the thing, there's a lot of questionable proof here. It makes me a bit skeptical. It seems kinda like wishful thinking and whispers as opposed to hard evidence that a Dragon Quest VII remake is actually in development. Listen though, I get it. I love Dragon Quest VII. When I played the remake on the 3DS, I adored the game. A huge world that slowly evolved as you progress through each area, with that classic Dragon Quest feeling, a job system, and characters you grow to love. It was one of the best games I played in 2023. It's not a surprise that people are hyped, and it's possible it's true. Dragon Quest III was incredibly successful for Square Enix. It was their most successful game of 2024. It only makes sense to continue that trend, and Dragon Quest VII is a worthy candidate because outside of the 3DS, Dragon Quest VII is incredibly hard to get access to. Possibly one of the most difficult considering the state of 3DS emulation and how incredibly low print both the English version of the PlayStation and 3DS versions of Dragon Quest VII were. And lastly, of course we want to believe it and get hyped. Square Enix has a trend lately of remakes and remasters, games like Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven, the upcoming Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D, and Star Ocean 2R. I'm sure we'll get it at some point, but I don't think it's gonna be that soon. I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer here, but take a step back with me and let's get into why exactly I am skeptical. Firstly, let's talk about the source. This comes from a website called mpfirst.com. Personally, I have never heard of this website. I've never seen any announcements, any news from them whatsoever, so I'm not sure how credible they actually are. Furthermore, their source is internal documents we've seen. Honestly, this just gives me the same vibes as my uncle works at Square Enix. Trust me, bro. Next, Dragon Quest VII is massive. It's easily one of the longest JRPGs I've ever played, and I want to say one of the longest in existence. Remember how I mentioned that I played the 3DS version? Well, that is more streamlined and a shorter version than the PlayStation, and it still took me over 100 hours to finish. I've heard horror stories of the original taking 130 to 150 hours to complete if you aim to complete it 100%. You're telling me they have a remake scheduled for next year or the year after and kept this entirely under wraps until now? Yeah, it's possible, but it's Square Enix. It's very unlikely. That is not even mentioning how much something like that would cost to remake. And then, of course, we have the bigger projects they have. Not only do we have Dragon Quest XII, which was announced over 4 years ago, and we have nothing but a logo and an updated logo, this isn't even including the other big projects Square Enix has, such as Kingdom Hearts 4 and Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. It doesn't exactly make much sense to add another gargantuan project when those are still in the process of being completed. It's entirely possible that they have different teams for them, but honestly, it seems very strange. And I'm aware that I mentioned it earlier and said it would make sense given the availability of Dragon Quest VII, but the fact of the matter is that Dragon Quest VII, it already has a remake, and it's already somewhat modernized. The 3DS remake is amazing. Now, if I want to grasp at straws, I could see them maybe taking that version of the game and maybe modifying it to work on a single screen, kind of like what they did with Bravely Default Flying Fairy HD. I don't see it getting a full-on built from the ground up remake, but that might be the closest thing we're going to get. And the final reason why I'm pretty skeptical is their final piece of evidence that Dragon Quest VII is getting a remake. mpfirst.com stated that they had a chance to see the game's logo against a cloudy background. This is the one thing that tears this entire rumor apart. A cloudy background? Really? Dragon Quest VII has nothing to do with the clouds. If anything, it's about sailing around the empty world trying to discover new lands. Do you know what games in the Dragon Quest franchise have to do with clouds? The entire Zenithian trilogy, Dragon Quest IV through Dragon Quest VI, which would almost make sense. And as of October, we will finish the Erdrick trilogy with Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D in addition to Dragon Quest III, which was released last year. I think it would make sense to move on to the next trilogy after this. The more I talk about it, the more I think that maybe this was a bit of a misunderstanding. Could you imagine if this isn't actually a leak of the Dragon Quest VII remake, but instead a leak of the Zenithian Dragon Quest games getting an HD 2D remake? That would be something to get excited about. Honestly, if they were to decide to do another remake, which I will go ahead and say I don't think is going to happen until at least Dragon Quest XII is out, it seems like it would be much smarter to do a Dragon Quest IV or even a Dragon Quest VIII remake. So yes, at this point, I am incredibly skeptical, and I don't believe in the least that this leak is accurate or even real. Square Enix, you want to convince me that it's real? Show a teaser during TGS or a Square Enix event. Until I see something like art, a trailer, a teaser, or I'd even accept something said from Yuji Horii himself, I'm convinced that this isn't actually real. Though, I won't lie, if I see Square Enix hiring for an HD 2D position or file new trademarks, I might get excited. But that's just me. I find it hard not to get excited when it comes to even the possibility of a new Dragon Quest game. So yeah, it's a cool rumor, and I'm taking it with a grain of salt for the time being. While we're talking about Dragon Quest remakes, do you think a Dragon Quest VII remake would even be feasible? Or maybe there's another game you feel in the series that deserves that remaster or remake treatment more? As far as I'm concerned, Dragon Quest IX is the most deserving. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I make sure to read each and every one of them. If you enjoyed today's video and want more JRPG talk featuring lists, reviews, and news updates, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and check out this video, talking about 10 of the best JRPGs for beginners. This has been Shinky, thanks so much for watching, and until the next one, have a wonderful day.